It doesn't say Trish on the screen to make this awkward. Okay, it just said live, so I'm going to try that again. Hello, everybody. This is I am Elise Tate, and I've done a few of these. So some of you may know me, some of you may not. Trish has given me the privilege every once in a while to hop on here and to do some interviews with a few companies, and Labway Math is a new one, and I am really excited about this because my own son has been experiencing the coaching sessions with Labway. So I have not only known about them, but intimately through experience, have my own things to say about them. And I'm really excited for the homeschool community at large, really, to have this introduction to you guys. So I don't want to say too much because we'll get into it, but I want to give you the opportunity. Derrick, this is Derrick Latriel. Is that how you say your last name, Latriel?
Yeah.
And Derrick has a fascinating story. At least I think it's fascinating. I love your background and then how you came to education and what you've done. So I want to give you an opportunity, please, to kind of just tell your story, and then we'll get into the questions about Labway.
Okay. All right. First, I want to thank you, Elise, for having me, and Hip Homeschool Moms for
so glad our worlds collided. This is awesome.
Yep, I'm glad you found us, and I'm glad that we're here together. And thank you to Hip Homeschool Moms too.
Yeah.
So my backstory: born in Germany, raised in the U.S. Was in the military. After I got out of the military, I did some work. A lot of work overseas, and in 2012, I partnered up with a group overseas. And we started schools in Southeast Asia. We eventually created 20 high schools, grades 7 through 12, with 18,000 kids before the pandemic. We lost some of those kids in the pandemic because it's a low-cost private high school. It only costs $1,000 a year to go there.
Wow.
So these are not families with a lot of money. These are families with a little bit of money who are trying to get out of the public school system. And so yeah, but we still have well over 10,000 students now. We also did some work with colleges out there, rebuilt the National Teachers College from the ground up, that kind of stuff. And then the pandemic hit, and with everybody, that changed things, right?
Especially in Asia, right?
Yeah. That country was on the lockdown. I had a standing visa to go to the country, but could not go, and so I was kind of I'd spent most of my time outside the U.S. from 2012 right up to the pandemic, and I was sort of stranded back in the U.S. And I started kind of paying attention, and I said, "Wow, the school system here has got some problems. There's really some issues here."
Right.
While I was gone, something happened, and I
and
started
you have
looking.
Children, right?
Yeah. I have 2 kids. And 2 kids that are still in school, one that's out of school.
Right.
So yeah, I began to just do some homework, and I'd say, what can I do to help with this problem in the U.S. I looked at potentially starting a school. It was going to be a relatively small scale kind of thing. I mean, a big activity, but not a lot of people would be helped, right? And then I looked at charter schools, and you're really still under the umbrella. I'm in Colorado, and you're still under the umbrella of the public schools charter there. So I didn't necessarily like that idea. One day down the road, that could become a problem.
Right.
And then I started looking at homeschooling. And funny thing is, I'd offered my kids to homeschool, and they did not want to, but I forced them to homeschool with math. So that's I've been teaching my kids math. We can come back to that later, but I began to understand the homeschool market. I started doing interviews, long form interviews with homeschool moms, and listening, and dads, a few dads, and listening to their story and finding out what is it that they needed help with. And it seemed that there were 2 main anxieties that people had when they were entering the homeschool space. One was around socialization. Will their kids be socially well-adjusted?
Mm-hmm.
But when you listen to their story, that always worked out.
Yeah.
Church and activities and groups and sports, and it just always worked out. The second anxiety was math. And I said, well, we know how to help with math. So that's when we started to build this concept. Last year in 2022, we prototyped this business, and now we're piloting this business and bringing it to homeschool families so that we can help everybody with math.
Okay. So the idea behind trying to explain what you do, tell me first, if you were to, who needs what you do? Like, is
Right.
there a specific, only these kind of people would use Labway? Like people
Yeah.
who struggle, people, who
Yeah.
actually is the right market for you?
Right. Well, we find that there's two types that need it. Um, there's a few kids. Our experience, again, we have thousands of kids in our schools over in Southeast Asia, so we kind of know the numbers. But like literally, about 15% of students get it. You can just do the regular stuff and they get it. They figure it out. They're sort of non-consciously picking up the logic of math.
What's that percentage?
About 15%.
Okay.
Yeah. About
That's more
15.
than I would think.
Yeah, well, it's not, yeah, they're usually about 15%, are just, you can do anything, you can do the regular stuff with them and they'll kind of, so they're intuitively kind of picking up the logic of math
Okay.
in a subconscious manner. About 15%, 10 to 20%, depending, have this outright struggle, like this very visual struggle, like, okay, they're just getting it wrong. They're getting everything wrong. There's a big chunk in the middle, 60 to 80%. That seem to be doing okay until they get to higher levels of math. They're doing the procedures, they're remembering the procedures, but those procedures don't mean anything. And so they the struggle is not a failure of I'm just getting problems wrong. The struggle is I'm not interested in this. This is boring. This is uninteresting. This is uh, my least favorite subject. I'm not a math person. You know, all those kind of thought process, right?
Yeah.
But the kid's doing okay on tests, right? Because the kid's memorizing their procedures, seeing the problem and doing the procedures. It doesn't mean much. But then once they get to the higher levels of math, the house of cards all falls down, right?
Yes, that was my experience, particularly with one of my children. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so that's probably the most common frequent story actually. And we help with both of those situations. The math coaching helps with both. It's an innovation that helps with the child that's just having some kind of outright struggle, or the kid who's just not, this is not having any meaning. This is not interesting. This is boring, and this is not connecting.
Okay, so you're not tutoring. Let's just get that right out of the way. We had that conversation early on, and we were like, let's take tutoring off because you're not tutoring. This is very different than tutoring. Help us understand why you're coaching and how is that different from tutoring?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a few different reasons. One, when we looked at this, we said this has to be affordable. We said if it's not affordable, then what's the point? We're just going to help a few wealthy families, right?
Yeah.
So we had to look at what are we going to do to make this affordable. So to make it affordable, there's multiple things we're doing, right? One is we don't tutor. We don't take it over. A tutor kind of takes it over and does the whole, I'm going to teach you all of math.
Right.
We don't do that. We're going to work with the homeschool parent. Okay. And so the homeschool parent can continue to do what they do, which is generally how do you solve this problem, right? What we do is we come along and we work on why. We have a conversation. I know it sounds strange, but we have a conversation, this flowing, ongoing conversation about the why. We pull the why out of the child. We ask them questions. We discuss cases and situations, and we get them to discover the why of math, which is typically the piece that makes math. It's not typically; it is the piece that it's missing. That kind of curriculum can't have a conversation. It can have an explanation, but it can't have a conversation. But a math coach can, right? But we're just having that conversation that's missing in the curriculum. Only that, so that we don't have to do twice as much, 3 times as much with the learner. That reduces the amount of interaction. So we get together with learners twice a week for 1 hour at a time. So two total hours a week, right? Usually that's our engagement with, and that's enough to handle that piece that's generally missing. So that's why we call it a math coach, because it's unique in that way. We're not completely taking over. And that's one way we keep it lower cost, by not doing everything.
Well, and I think, okay, 2 things I want to say. One is I want to go ahead and make really clear, and we're going to talk about the how of this, but it is working concurrently with your curriculum. Labway is not asking you to change curriculums at all. This
That's
is
right.
let us come alongside whatever
Right.
you're using,
Right.
because there's not a competition with the two. We
Hmm.
are actually undergirding,
Right.
and we'll get to more discussion because I have a good question. So help us. Okay, so first, then the second question before I want to get to the one about how is it affordable? Because honestly, I was just talking about this with someone who's using you, and it's almost ridiculous. Like I do tutoring, and I charge what you charge one session. So people are charging $35 to $50 for a tutoring session.
For 1 hour. For 1 hour.
Not even, honestly, a lot of times what you end up doing, because you're coming alongside, you have to do things the way the curriculum does it, right? We don't have, I mean, because I have knowledge of watching the coaching sessions with my own child, I already see the huge lack that I've been offering myself as a person who does some on the side math tutoring. And it's what you offer. It is ridiculous how inexpensive and affordable. You're making it very accessible. I mean,
That
very,
it has to be.
for what you do.
That's the point of it. That's the point of it. It has to be accessible, right? It's not something that that you want to just plug in for 1 month and there, no, my kid's fixed. Because first of all, it just doesn't work like that, right? It takes a little bit of time. So we had to make it affordable. And yeah, we another thing we do is we work in groups. We work in small groups. That also makes it affordable. Besides the fact that we don't take over everything, we work with your curriculum. We also work in small groups. So usually each child starts one-on-one with a coach, and then other kids come along and join that group, right?
Okay.
And so
Trying to
what
make it a good
happens?
fit, like making sure
Yeah,
kids are the right.
we know that child well after we've spent a few weeks with them, about a month with them, right? We know that child well, and so we know who's in a very similar position, and we
Yeah.
can bring in people who are in similar positions, and then you get a neat chemistry going on there. We keep the group small though. We know that we can't go beyond 7. Usually 6 or 7 is the upper limit where we start to lose the efficacy of the interaction. There's an efficacy of interaction that's necessary. So
Well,
the groups
because
have
you're
to be
asking them to
limited.
process information, because you're asking the kids to talk and
Yeah,
process, and you have to allow enough time for all the kids in the group to do that.
that's right. You
Yeah.
got it. Exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, you've seen it happen, and you've seen how much that literally our objective is that the student is talking more than the coach, because it's a Socratic method. It's a Socratic approach where we're asking a question and the student's struggling with that, working with that, creating a drawing, figuring something out, and speaking. There's whenever I watch a session, it's easy to tell if something's if I'm observing one of our coaches. I can just fast forward through an hour of video, and all I have to do is click 20 times on a 60-minute video, and if I see the coach talking, something's wrong. Like it's easy. I go, wait a minute, we got a problem. It's quality control, right? We have a problem with this. The coach is talking too much. The student has to talk because the student has to discover. What we do is we lead them to discover. We tried this with thousands of kids. We figured out, oh, they need to understand this logic and that logic. They need to understand why you flip and multiply. They need to understand, why you don't why you don't add the bottoms, why you only add the tops. They need to understand the whys of this.
Yeah.
And we tried to tell them, and we failed. And we realized, no, we have to lead them to discover why.
Okay. I have got to brag for a minute on that very fact right there.
Okay.
There are so many homeschoolers out there who say, listen, one of the reasons I homeschool, and I talk about this because I work with curriculum companies, the magazine and curriculum companies, and I talk to people all the time. One of the reasons that they're homeschooling is they want to teach their kids how to think, not what to think, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
if we're homeschooling to have time to have our kids discuss, why are we then putting them in math curriculums where we're just talking at them, right? However that occurs, whatever math curriculum, and not making math a discussion. And the thing is, we're saying I want higher thinking skills. That's what I want for my children. I want them to leave education being trained to be a thinker, right? A higher level, on a higher reasoning, being able
Mhm,
to,
mhm.
and that is exactly what you guys are doing. And I'm going to tell you, it's one of the reasons I fell in love with you. And my friend who's using you has fallen in love with you. So hers is 7-year-old, mine is
Mhm.
a 15-year-old. And
Mhm.
I'm watching through the process um, that take place, that conversation with the
Mhm.
how,
Yeah.
fractions,
Mhm.
multiplication, division,
Mhm.
all the foundational. And I love that. I think it's one of the strongest things that you guys are offering to parents is not just to help with a math struggle, but even more than that, you are helping with the math struggle by undergirding that foundation
Yeah.
and also doing it in a way that is supporting a value that so many of us have, which is we want our kids to be thinkers.
Right.
So it's beautiful. And I kind of am answering a question that I had for you, which is why is it for everybody? And
Yeah.
that's why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll be honest. I mean, we want to help the people who need help. Uh, I'll say if you've got somebody in the house who's great at math, we've done the homework, we've done the research. Those are the people who aren't seeking us, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you've got you've got a husband who's he comes home and he's great at math and he loves sitting down with the kids. I teach my kids math. Um, uh, you know, and that's okay. That's great. If you've got that resources at your fingertips. If you don't, then we're that person. We're that person who loves math, who's great at math, who gets it at a super deep level, um, and is not going to explain it to your kid, but rather guide your child to discover it.
But
And that
that's why
is,
even if they're strong math kids, even if dad is teaching and you wouldn't say it's a huge struggle, that's why it's also something. And we can go there another day, but that's
Mhm.
why, because when you are um, encouraging that higher level thinking for math, even if they're doing good at math on paper, right? There's not
Mhm.
necessarily the
Yeah, that's the trickiest part. Is I just it if you've got a child who's very diligent with school, they like to perform, they like to do well, they like to get good scores, and they're pretty good at memorizing. It can really fool you for a while.
yeah.
This child seems everything seems fine, but you know uh, when you do, I would encourage those folks, if you have any question about that, is how is my child doing with math? We do a consultation session, just a simple free consultation session that's really telling, where we can talk to the parent before and after the consultation, say, here's what we see about how your child is thinking mathematically. Um, and that's insightful too. That sometimes helps people figure that out.
Yeah. So, do you want to help us understand a little bit how it's not in conflict with people's curriculum? Like, how
Yeah.
is it?
Yeah.
We may have already kind of done that, I
Yeah.
would say, but is
Yeah,
there?
yeah. That's part of the reason we're not so expensive, is we're not trying to be CTC math. We're not trying to be a whole curriculum. You need a curriculum. You need something to go through that covers, because we're trying to just be the piece that's so impossible for a curriculum to be, which is a unique conversation. A curriculum can't be this unique Socratic conversation. So what are sorry, wait a minute. I lost the question. Was it why this is less
Well,
expensive,
how
or
it
what,
works,
how how it
how
works?
it's
Okay.
not competition for
Right.
curriculum.
Right. So what we're doing is we're gonna meet with the child, and we're gonna have a discussion. It's a talk. It's a discussion, and it's always placing logic before procedure. So we want the child to, instead of, we can explain the procedures, but that's the curriculum does that.
Yeah,
So we don't seek to explain procedures. What we
yeah.
do is we seek to get them to discover, okay, how did this come about? It's almost it's framing questions to them. It's Socratic, it's question based, because they've got to discover it. They got to figure it out on their own. When they figure it out on their own, when they discover, okay, I figured out why you flip and multiply,
So
then
I
they
was
remember.
going to say, isn't that Micaiah had that? I remember that. Can you
He had that
maybe
moment.
you can use the example of the video that you highlighted to me? I think it was the fraction one for Micaiah, my son. There was
Yeah,
an aha moment, and that might help just explain a little bit about the how of what you do
yeah.
with kids. I don't
Um,
know if
I'm
you can think of
I'm
an
not sure which one was that.
example.
Was that multiplying fractions? Which one was that?
There was a multiplying fractions, but I think there was one. Yes, yes, I think it was a multiplying fractions. Um,
Yeah, I can give you an example along those lines. Yeah,
or something like that. It doesn't matter if you
yeah,
explain, but that one
yeah.
came up to me.
I can give you an example along those lines. Yeah. So a great example that helps clarify this is you have, for example, well, I'll do this with you if you'll play along with me, okay? So yeah, don't worry.
I've seen how hard these questions are, and I wonder what sometimes I see Trish laughing at me. No. So literally I watched him, and you see the deer in the headlights, and I'm going, oh. Okay, so that's right. Hopefully I don't make a fool of myself. That's what I
No,
kept
you won't. What?
learning.
This will be easy. This will be easy.
Okay, okay.
Okay, we're gonna make this easy. So 6 times 3, Elise.
18.
18. Super. Terrific. So what's 6? What is 6? See, these are the kinds of questions we ask. You don't normally get this in math. What is 6?
A number.
Yeah,
A
I was
number?
literally going to say a number, but was I going to look stupid? This is what I'm thinking in my head.
Okay, a number. Okay, fine. It's a number. But let's pick something in the row. Pick something that is 6. Let's pick something. I don't care what it is. Pick something.
6 flowers.
Flowers. Okay, flowers. Okay, great.
Okay.
So let's jump to the end. What's 18?
It's how many flowers. Well, it's going to be flowers again.
Flowers. It's flowers. It's flowers. Okay, super. Now, what's 3?
How many times we are doing something to the flowers.
Right. Times? What did we do? What did we do? Just pick something. Well, you can pick them.
Oh, what did we do? Maybe you have to be struggle, don't you? It's mean.
I know, I'm terrible. Hey, everybody.
Okay, so let's say, what am I doing with 6 flowers? No, literally, I've watched my own kid in these videos struggle with, I don't know, the examples.
Yep.
Of when would I use it? I actually love this.
But don't worry. We're going to go somewhere with this.
6.
So what's the 3? What's the 3? It is.
The number.
Is it flowers? Is it flowers?
No, it's
not flowers,
the number
right? Of course not.
I'm doing something with 6 flowers.
Right. What? I mean, we started with 6. We ended with 18.
Giving them to 3 friends. No, I'm not.
Okay. All right. Giving them. All right. So you gave 6 flowers to 3 friends. So you gave away 18 flowers.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Good job.
Right. That was good.
That was good. Okay. So, but I want to point out what happened here. Okay. Look, we had flowers, we had giving, and we had flowers. Right?
Yeah.
The second thing is different from the first thing. The 3 is different from the 6.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing. They're different.
Right.
And this is important to understand.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to show you why it's important. You ready for this? Here we go. Okay. So take 4 and multiply it by, take 4 and multiply it by half. What is the answer?
2.
Okay. How'd you get that?
Half of 4. I mean, I divided ultimately 4 in half. That's how I did it.
Okay. Right. Because the procedure would be 4 times 1 and 1 times 2, 4 over 2, reduce 2.
Right.
So the answer would be 2.
Yes.
And it would be half of 4. Right. But logically, the 4, just like the 6 is happening 3 times, the 4 is happening half the time.
Right.
Now, so all of a sudden, multiplication of fractions makes sense. It's not just a procedure. Well, we multiply the top and bottom.
Right.
We just do that. It's just a rule.
Right.
Why? No, it's because of this. It's because of the idea that this first thing is a noun and the second thing is a verb. It's a happening. Yes. And then when you start to do, okay, so now what's a quarter times a half? Well, it's a quarter only half happening. And if a quarter only half happens, it is
12.5 cents. A quarter happens.
A quarter only half happening.
You're losing me.
Right. Okay. So that's fine. So a quarter, 1/4. Right.
Yeah.
1/4.
Yeah.
Only half happens. If it only half happens, then how much do we have?
If it,
If a quarter only half happens.
oh, and
Half of a
eight.
quarter.
An eighth. Yes, exactly. Which
Okay.
is also one times 1 and 4 times 2. So
Right.
you can procedurally, there's a way. But the reason, the why instead of the
Yes.
how, is because
Yes.
the quarter only half happens.
Gotcha. Yeah. I
You
mean, I
see?
went through this whole discussion watching Noelle do that
Yeah.
with Micaiah and was fascinated. And I love too that they go back and review. I've watched enough
Mhm.
sessions where I watch him pick back up, and I watch Micaiah's confidence completely different as he remembers a little faster. And he uses the application of the flowers, or they've
Mhm.
used food. And, a lot of times
Yeah.
teenagers, they ask them to use examples, they're using food, and they've
Yep.
used cars
Okay.
and,
We have
so
a comment that says, I'm lost too. So we need to
Oh.
redo that. We need to do it different. We need to, so if we lost them, we need to help them see it too.
Sure.
So I'm
Yeah.
fine.
Well-
At least he's going to do this one again.
Well, it
Bye.
was really, what he did was really fast, I will say. But here's the
Yeah.
thing: the point of the conversation that he was giving was that he's trying to I've watched enough of these videos to know the first time I experienced watching Micaiah do this, I went, "What?" Then I watched it again. Then I watched it again. And as you go on, you begin to understand, because the thing is your kids are going to understand foundations.
Yeah.
These are foundations and why multiplication works using real life examples. And it does take a while to hop onto this way of thinking math. I want to say. So it's okay that they may not get it, Trish. I'm not saying he can't explain it now, but I am wanting to explain that I have watched my own child, and it does take a while to pick it up.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I think will help is if we explain the Socratic part,
Okay.
if we talk through that
Go
a little
ahead.
bit, that might help.
People are not, we cannot assume that people understand what Socratic means.
Because I did.
I'll let you explain.
Yeah. Well, what we just did, Elise, is that I didn't launch off with explaining to you that the second number in a series of multiplication is a verb.
Right.
I didn't explain that to you. Instead, what I did is I just started to ask you questions. Okay, what's the 6? What's this? This is the Socratic approach, right? I got you to discover that the second number, the 3, is different from the 6.
Right.
That the first number, the 6, is a noun. The first number in multiplication is a noun. The second number is a verb. But I got you to discover that. I didn't tell you that, right?
Yeah.
Now, I did it really fast because we're on this conference call.
Yeah.
We do it a lot slower with kids, right?
Right.
We do it a lot slower with kids. We
Especially
have this long drawn. Oh, yeah. That can take like 60 minutes right there. That one piece. Yeah, that one piece. Yeah. So for sure. And then I jumped forward, right? But the Socratic we demonstrated it. I jumped forward and I said, okay, now let me multiply a couple of fractions and show how you can think about multiplying fractions logically, right? Half of 4 is of course 2, right? So you can then apply that logic going forward. But again, I was asking you questions, right? Until you get stuck. When you get stuck and you said, okay, I'm stuck, wait, then I can jump in and explain things. And the Socratic approach is to bring you into situations and ask you to analyze the situations. Yeah. So I'll give an example with linear equations. We always talk about y equals mx plus b, x2 minus x1 over x over y, y2 minus y1, rise over run. We talk about b is the y-intercept. We talk about all this stuff, and none of it makes any sense to a kid. Yeah. Right? It's just a bunch of algebraic terminology. Yeah. Instead, what we talk about there is when we start with we talk about a relationship. We talk about a relationship between two things, right? So that relationship can be a relationship between fingers and humans. If I put 100 humans in a room, how many fingers will I have, right? That's a relation. It's an algebraic relationship. It's a very simple algebraic relationship, but it's an algebraic relationship. And so we start to show those things. We have a lot of discussions about relationships, and we use the graph without ever using any algebraic terms, right? And we're giving them all these situations and asking, what would happen with this? What would happen with that? We're getting them to rederive the concept of what B is. B is the constant. And they're figuring that out from stories that we talk to them about, we ask them about, right? Rather than us explaining the procedures of all that stuff, they're refiguring out, reinventing by responding to our questions and responding to our stories and responding to our situations. And we ask them to make up stories. We'll say, you make up a story where this and this kind of thing happens.
So going back to the multiplication example, you started with explaining 6 times 3, but you finished with fractions because you were trying to help explain that it works across the board.
It does work across the board. That concept, the fact that the second thing is an occurrence, the 3, in 6 times 3, the 3 is an occurrence. That matters significantly when you get to understanding the operations of fractions. It matters when you get to algebra and you start multiplying equations. The second thing as an occurrence, this matters, and understanding that.
And I'll say, as a 4th grade, like I'm tutoring 4th grade, like she has to understand that a 4th is 2/8. So that was part of what I was forgetting when you were asking me the question. I was, but I love that the point of that was that you were prompting me to think of it myself. I think I just want to get that across to, even if you didn't understand what Derrick just did, the point is what we were trying to demonstrate, how they work with our children to Socratically get out of them, not math procedure, but why math works.
Right. Another thing is I didn't come prepared with visuals. A lot of times we would have visuals here for this kind of thing.
We're going to do this again, so you can bring your visuals.
Yeah. We would demonstrate. We'd say, okay, look, here's half a circle. Now, what if this half a circle only half happens?
Yeah.
Well, then you would have a quarter of it, right? So, visuals make it, and so we get we bring visuals into it a lot that I didn't do here, right? But with fractions, a lot of times we would bring visuals in, and that's part of our methodology as well as using concrete and pictorial and then moving to the abstract afterwards.
And I saw that video with Micaiah, the pie, where he was understanding part of kind of what we just did, which is understanding fractions and multiplication. And he moved the pie, right? He had 2 colors. And as soon as he walked maybe a half an hour through a lesson and they came back to those pies and the overlapping, trying to explain. And all of a sudden, Micaiah had this, because he saw it on the screen, but they walked through a process. And then he had, I don't know, that was memorable for me. So I love that you guys are using the screen. So it's not just, sometimes he uses a whiteboard, but you're using beautiful. So, okay. Are there any more questions that, people want? I do have, one more that I want to ask, but I want to see if people want to keep this discussion going. Trish, is there anything?
Nope, not right now.
Okay.
I think we may have to come back and do this again where we have the visuals because I think they got lost too.
I know, but even if they did get lost, I hope not. But the point is that I wanted them to get how they work, right? That's the point of this, right? So that was, I don't get lost in the how, because trust me, if you watch a couple of these videos, you'll start picking it up. You will. That's what I've been doing. I guess, Derrick, do you want to add anything before I ask you the question? I really want to know, is this a good fit, or why is starting now would be a good opportunity for people, like using the summer? Is that a ideal time to kind of hop on, jump in?
Yeah, it is. We do what we do is we do something called phase 0, where we do this. We'll do a consultation, free consultation, see where we're at with the child's math thinking, how they're thinking mathematically. Ask them a bunch of questions, right? And then we'll typically review a bunch of math that a child has already done and get them to understand the logic of math they've already done. Now, if you've got a very young child, maybe that review is going to be short. But if you've got an older child, that review could be quite long, right? That's really helpful to get that phase 0 stuff, which is a review of the logic of everything they've already done, out of the way during the summer. Then when you're heading into the new year, we are right. We're caught up with the logic.
Yeah.
Our logic lessons are caught up with your how-to lessons.
Yep.
At the same time school starts next year. So it's a good time now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I used to, because I didn't think, and my kids were super strong in math. None of them are terrible. Well, I do have one child who has like literal diagnoses, and we figured out, man, I wish I'd have realized this sooner. That explains a lot. But I would buy workbooks and be like, I really want you guys to, do something, because it's one of those subjects that you feel like you don't want them to go 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks and have no practice, because we're in the mindset that, oh, you got to remember this procedure. Right?
Yeah, but practicing, see, when you discover the reason behind a procedure, you no longer need to memorize it. And instead of spending all summer just trying to rotely practice a bunch of procedures you don't understand, you could spend the summer figuring out, oh, this is why this procedure is the way it is. This is why it exists the way it is. This is the sense of it. Okay. So now if I understand the reason behind something, then okay.
Yeah. And well, and here's the thing. If I had known this, 5, 8, 10 years ago when I was doing this is such a great opportunity to get your kids, not just like, I think that what we're giving our kids in the gift of getting to work with you guys is maybe even we can move towards, I like math a little bit. Wow, this is so interesting. Do you know what I mean? Maybe, there's a bigger place for why I think this is a good thing to use over the summer.
I thought that comment was absolutely the perfect comment for y'all at this very time, because it's like,
did you see that, Derrick?
I saw Michelle's.
Person I gave up. But here's the thing: get a session and go to it with your kids. Just sit there.
Yeah.
So I have a different reason for summer. So one of the things that we homeschool year round, because we own homeschool road trips and we travel a lot. And I know a lot of families are starting to travel a lot and want to incorporate that into their regular, class and going and doing. So we do things over the summer to keep our, number one, to cover our hours, because when you're traveling, sometimes when you're traveling, you don't get all the subjects in. But math is one of those subjects that if you don't do it, if you stop doing it over the summer, they slide. And so for my kids, I did that the very first year. I said, oh no, we're going to take off for the summer. And so we did. And then the next year when we came back, it was 6 weeks. 6 weeks of review to get back into the swing. And I said, never again. So we always do math over the summer. So I think this is a perfect time for people to try something like this. If you have a struggling child who is not getting it, and you've tried multiple curriculums and they're just not clicking, maybe it's time to try something totally different and step out and try coaching. And
so, not buy another workbook.
Her son's doing it and loves it. We have another friend of ours who owns Homeschooling Today magazine, and her son is doing it. He's 7, and they're loving it. So we are seeing that this is approach is something that's going to be popular. This is a new company. We really wanted to introduce them to y'all and help them launch well. So I'll back out now. I just wanted to put my 2 cents in about why you need to go over the summer.
Trish, before you go, there are several videos on our website that show the method in motion. Yes. So if anyone was confused by what I just did here, high speed, you can watch an actual chunk of a session with a child, with a teenager, with a little kid. We've got videos on there that show this method in motion on our website. So if any of you are like, I don't know, I still don't understand what he was doing, you can watch the videos there. That should clear it up.
Many times as you want. Just go back over and.
Is that going to be under the How We Do It section, or is it on the front page?
Both front page and How We Do It. There's videos of both.
Start with front page. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in now, so it will show up on all of the pages. Yeah. So there you go. Okay, it's in, and I'm going to back out.
So real quick, we did not talk about, and I don't know if we, but want to make this a long conversation, but the ideal age range for this.
This is a conversation. I want to answer actually 2 questions.
Absolutely, take it however you want.
this is that is what it is. That it is a conversation. We're not giving a bunch of practice problems. Sometimes we do a few practice problems, but it's a conversation. And so if your child is amenable to an online conversation, this fits.
Yep.
What I mean by that is it typically doesn't work with a 4 or 5-year-old.
Right.
Some 6-year-olds, yeah. Some 6-year-olds, yeah. 7-year-olds, definitely. Okay. Does it work with kids who are 15, 16, 17? Sure. However, if you're just coming along going, oh, we need someone to help our child with calculus, we're not the right guys for you, because we're not just going to jump into calculus and go, okay, we're going to go back through math and go, okay, the reason your child is struggling with calculus is they don't have all this underlying foundation. Mm-hmm. Now, if you do want to go back and fix all that, you can sign us up, but we will not get to calculus until we fix the underlying foundation.
Yes.
Right. So sometimes older kids don't work with us very much because it's a long curve to fix. Right. Then also I wanted to point out, because we didn't intend this. This wasn't the goal, but it just works. We've seen with Down syndrome kids, with autistic kids, and easily with ADD kids, no problem with our methods.
That's yeah.
Yeah. This is because if your child is amenable to a conversation, then this works. That's it.
And I'm just going to add that I was a little nervous because Micaiah is doing geometry this year, and he would be your kid who would say, hey, I don't like math. I've never liked math. And we used good math curriculums. I don't want to throw them out now, but we used 2 very popular math curriculums. He's a solid math kid. His teacher, who he's had for years, she said he has no problems with math. He's, done SAT questions and the like. And actually, one of the other benefits I want to throw in is, I think, helping with SAT, ACT, because you're teaching the critical thinking, the Socratic way of thinking at questions, right? So, but he has absolutely had a fantastic experience, and I'm totally shocked by it, to be honest. He is a musician. He loves all things very right brain theater child, and he has loved this. It has been a really good fit for him, and Noel has been a fantastic coach.
Yeah, thank you. I fill in. I've helped when Noel was absent. Like I said, we have thousands of kids over in Southeast Asia that we perfected this with, that we went through years of iteration with. It works consistently. We just wouldn't accept a bunch of kids not getting math and a bunch of kids not liking math. We just wouldn't accept it. And so we iterated and we worked on this process until we came up with something that works for almost everybody.
And I don't think there's anything out there like this. And I think you're amazing. I think you're going to be an answer to, I do think it's going to, it's got to catch on, right? I'm so glad that we get the opportunity to get you out there, but I think what you're doing is amazing and there's nothing like it. And I love that you're not competing. You're not, we love some of the maths that, CTC that, we love those maths, and we love that you are.
And those are necessary. Yeah. Those are necessary, and they play a role, and absolutely. 100%. There's a question here on what should third graders learn from math? Yeah. This is, I don't view it in grades. We don't view it in grades. We don't view it in grade levels. The way we structure math, we actually structure math in 4 stages leading up to algebra 2. Everything from numeracy, from 1 and 0 all the way through algebra 1, we see in 4 stages. So usually, I'll just say a third grader is often starting to get into fractions, right? They're getting into more complex multiplication, more complex division, and they're starting to get into fractions. But I'll say this: fractions is exactly where we start to lose most people, which is why we lost most people on this call, because fractions is most people don't understand what fractions are. The numerator and denominator. What does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's just a Latin words or something, right? Yeah. So it's, what does it mean? And why is 3 out of 12 eggs not really a fraction? Right? These kinds of things. We go into that. We have those discussions. Why it's not really a fraction, actually. It's a fraction of a dozen, but it's not a fraction of an egg. And these kind of discussions, when you and in third grade, that begins. You begin to unravel the mystery of fractions, of partial numbers. But I would say that's what the challenge is there, and increasing their multiplication and division capabilities is usually where kids are at, to answer that question. And then somebody asked about seventh and eighth grade.
Well, no, she was
Um,
7 and 8 year old. She
oh,
is
7, 8-year-old. Yeah,
same
yeah,
age,
yeah, yeah.
yes,
7, 8-year-old. Yeah,
third grader.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
So I bet they love you in Asia and they want to multiply schools there. And we are so happy to have you here. What a blessing
Well,
I think you're going to be to
yeah.
us. And I think you're a perfect fit for homeschoolers. And I think that's why you're here, because we, you know, it doesn't mean public schoolers are going to benefit too, but we have such flexibility time wise. And I think our appreciation for this method, this way of doing things, is something that's going to catch on, because I
Right.
think a lot of people can appreciate it. I know I
I
have,
hope so.
and I've come to love it the more and more I watch, and the more and more, you know, I said this to you earlier, but I was shocked. And my 16-year-old may be a little unique. He's a super sweet kid, you know, and he was very open to doing this. I didn't get any flack from him, but, you know, he's very, he likes to please. So I wondered, you know, after 8 weeks, would he be like, Mom, come on, you know? And when he said to me today, when I let him know this was going to come to an end, he said, it's not done now. I mean, literally with this concern, like we're not done yet. And I was so refreshed by that for a 16-year-old who's having math conversations for 1 hour twice a week to, you know, not look forward to it ending. I thought, you're doing something right. And I was really glad that I had him do this. So,
Thanks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are going to do this again in 2 months. Oh, we want to go. Okay.
There's one more question there. Is there another question there?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you read it, or do you need me to read it?
Yep. What do you know? What do you notice your child is? What if you notice your child is beyond third grade? Okay. So yeah, this works in such case. When we go through phase 0, what we do is we just check. We check all their logical foundations. If they're maybe, say, let's say your child is right now starting to do operations with fractions, right? So we're going to check all their logical foundations before that. Do they logically understand multiplying? Do they logically understand division? Do they logically understand these things? Do they have a logical basis for base 10s math? All these kinds of things. We're going to check all that stuff. And so if that's all there, you know, we're going to find out real quick. We ask questions, they answer them. It actually can move very fast. If a child has all the right answers, we're moving on. We're moving forward, right? And we'll catch up to wherever your child's at, and then we'll proceed to push their logic forward. To answer your question this way, another way to answer your question, I taught my own kids math. My son, 17 now, he's a junior in high school. In his second year of high school last year, he'd capped out all the math courses in school. And I only thing I did with him is to meet with him once a week for an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's it. And he just was ahead of school at all times.
Wow.
From just that, literally 2 or less hours a week, every week of his life, he was finished with math and ahead of school at all times. And he was a little booger because he would sit there and tell the teacher, "Oh, I just get it." He wouldn't tell the teacher that his dad taught him math already.
That's so funny. And she's saying she was the question was, you know, she's afraid to review because he's good with numbers. So I think this is a perfect fit for a kid like that, right?
Yeah, they'll love it.
A little bit with Lincoln, because in the end, you're not going to be boring. It's not rote procedure. It's asking questions where they get to creatively pick cars or flowers, and then they understand why, you know. So
this is the great equalizer. This process, the Socratic process, is the great equalizer, because it can take a kid who's moving fast, thinking deeply, and just make them think more deeply, take them faster. It can take a kid who needs to slow down. And it Ashley said this the other day to me when I met with her, Elise. She said, you know, it meets every kid where they're at.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, it does. I never put it that way, but yeah, she did. She put it that way.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, that is why you can say this is for everybody. Because we're going to meet your student, because the design of our methodology, what we do is meet them exactly where they are and help them go deeper.
Yeah. Yep.
It's beautiful. And it's math.
it's, yeah, I'm telling you, they won't hate math. They may not love math, like, oh, they may not, yeah, but they're not going to hate math. They'll appreciate it. At a minimum, what we get is an appreciation for math.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's a great way to end. If there's nothing else, and we're going to have links. Of course, you guys answer, this is going to be up for the whole week, right, Trish? And then they can, ask questions and post, and we're going to get questions. I'll be on there and I'll get questions to you, Derrick, if there's questions that we need to continue to answer. But keep, posting on the questions for the party, and we'll get you in the drawing. There's
Yes.
6 small and then 1 grand prize. So yeah, keep asking those questions. And we are going to be back with this discussion, which I'm thrilled with, in 2 months or so. We're going to be in over the summer, and we're going to do this all over again. Not the same conversation, but we'll be so feel free to ask questions, and maybe those will be the source of things we talk about even later. Thank you so much for I literally think I remember you saying it was just our worlds just collided. We just kind of found each other, and I just think, whoa, what a great gift I feel like I am able to offer to moms. So it's been great. Thank you. You're just an amazing explainer of things.
Well,
and
we want to make sure, like I said, we want to make sure every homeschool family doesn't have to worry about math. So we're there. If you got a problem with math, you can engage us. We'll cure that. We've built it to cure that.
And it is ridiculously affordable. I'm going to say that one more time. Like people are going to, I know that's the first thing people want to know, is, well, how much is it? But it is not the price of tutoring at all. And I think that's one of the huge selling points as well, that goes right along with how amazing the deeper thinking and the critical thinking is. So anyway,
thanks.
So if you guys have questions, post them, and we'll see you next time, we meet here a couple months. Thank you again, and good night, everybody.
Good night. Thanks.
Have a good night. Bye.